Hey guys, welcome to the Quilting Compound. I'm Jamie. It's been another few weeks, but I've been working on a scrap project that I wanted to share with y'all. So what you will need is scraps, and of course, I have a lot of scraps. I'm going to show you what all I've been going through to get this block done. It's an easy block, but I think it has a little oomph to it, so it's just not, plano. I have drawn it out. And then I have sewn some blocks. I have got some scraps cut. And also I have a partial block sewn here for you to show you what I've done. So with this, you're going to use 2.5-inch squares. So that means you could use a jelly roll. If you have a jelly roll you want to use, you can use that. If you're like me and you got a ton of scraps, you can grab all your scraps up, cut them in 2.5-inch squares, and that will be part of your block. I'm separating mine by color, so yeah, it'll be a little bit more of a controlled scrappy. But if you don't want to do that, you don't have to. After all, it is your quilt. You're the boss of your quilt. Thank you, Lori Holt. And also, you can actually switch up the block with your background. I'm going to use a white background. I'm going to use different white backgrounds. So you can either cut up all 2.5-inch squares, or what I'm going to show you here, instead of using all 2.5-inch squares, if it's going to be a scrappy background, if you decide you're going to use just one color, you can use a 2.5 by 4.5-inch rectangle, and I'm going to show you that so you'll know what I'm talking about. But this is the block. This is my written block, and then I'm going to show you a sewn block. Very easy. If I'm going to do a scrap quilt, I don't want it to be so difficult and I'm using scraps. I want it to be easier because I don't want to struggle through it. I want to be able to use those up. So here are a few of the blocks that I have sewn to show you. This one has got, as you can see, different orange scraps. Like this was part of a jelly roll that I used in another quilt. So I cut them up. This fabric is older than forever old. But you know what? I'd already cut it in 2.5-inch squares because I've been, trying to organize my scraps, which I'm not very good at. So I got to put them in this. So I did get to use them in this orange block here. Like I said, I'm separating mine by color. You can do it however you'd like. And here's another fabric. It is older than old. Now, I had enough of it where I could get my squares. You will need 8 total of your scraps. 8 of these. 8 of these. So 8 scraps, 2.5-inch squares. And that's how I made the half square triangles. I use the squares, and you can either draw the line or use the ruler. So here's another block. So this is, and see how I have different color or different background here. This has got some, I don't know what that is, lines. This has some hearts. I think, just all different. I cut them all up and grabbed them. And, some of them, I will show you, is I started a while back, just this little basket here, or bucket, whatever you want to call it. And it's pretty much all whites in here. So these are all my white scraps. Like this one, I think it must have been a 2-inch. So it wasn't big enough. So I've been going through here, cutting 2.5-inch squares out. Also, I have some fat quarters, like I may have had just a little chunk taken out of, or whatever the case may be. Or, you know what, maybe I just wanted to get rid of some of those fat quarters. Here's one I haven't cut into yet. But I can cut 2.5-inch strips out of this, And I'll show you what I'm talking about here in just a second. Here's another scrap block. It's the different color greens in here. Same color, but different prints. And what I'm talking about is this print, if you're going to use all the same background, instead of piecing your 2.5-inch squares here, you can just cut a 2.5 by 4.5-inch rectangle, and it will go there, and you'll need 2, and it will go here. You just, be mindful of when you're sewing your block together of how you will have to lay it out to sew it. So here's another. I had enough of this left over that I could use all of my I had enough squares, 2.5-inch, to sew this block. And here's one more. I had enough. As you can see, this is Sherry and Chelsea fabric. I'm very fond of it. I think I must have bought a fat quarter bundle and did 1 or 2 quilts, and I still had some left. So those are the blocks that I've got sewn together so far to make this quilt. Now the layout, I'm going to work on that. We're going to see how I need to turn each block. But you know what? I'm getting some of my scraps used up. Here's another one I've started. I've actually got, this has different color backgrounds. So here's the top. So as you can see, I've got some a little cross in there, and then the polka dots in this. But if I didn't, I could just use one of these strips. And I've already cut some because I'm going to do some other blocks using this, a 2.5 by 4.5. So, that'll be less piecing, less seams meeting and all that. So I'm going to move the camera down, and I'm going to show you what this block will look like. And I'll probably be able to get some of the scraps that I've already been cut up. I'll be able to show you those. So I'm going to move the camera down, so be aware it's getting ready to turn. So this is my block. And I went ahead and sewed it like this, and that way I could press it, because I do like my seams to meet. I could press it. I've used 3 different red 2.5-inch squares in this. So, and these are some of the other squares that I have cut up, or I already had cut up. That's going to be terrible. Sorry. So these are some of the squares. Here's some more over here. Put that over here. So those are some of the squares that I'll have coming up. And I had some leftover of these, this Forever Old fabric. I still have some of this lime green. I don't have enough lime green so far, but I'm sure I can probably find it. And this right here, I do have this for a background. I'm going to cut it up into whatever I can get out of it. If I can get the 2.5 by 4.5-inch rectangle and my squares, that's what I'll do. I found some more of these in that I'm going to cut up. Some of these are already cut squares. These are from the Valentine quilt. If you got to see my 2 of Hearts Valentine quilt, here's some of the scraps left over from this, and it looks like they'll be big enough. This one, it won't be. I think it's only about a 2. Let's measure. Oh, no. Well, it's close. It might be a sliver off. It's not quite that, so I'm going to put that back in my scrap bucket, bin, whatever. Here's some more. So this is what I have, just a little bit stacked up. See, this is not going to work. These are going to be too small. There's a triangle. And I also wanted to say, if you have cutoffs from other quilts that you made that has maybe a white background, okay, I'm going to move you up so you can see me. If you have cutoffs from other quilts that has a white background, you can go ahead and sew those up if they'll be a 2.5-inch square and half square triangle, and that can be part of your block. So this is what I'm working on. I'm gonna go ahead and sew this block up for you right here and show you what it looks like when I'm done. But I think this is an easy block, but it does have interest. It's just not some squares. I think it's a really cute block. I like it for some reason. But so I'm going to sew this up, this red one up. And I did go ahead, like I said, and I pressed so my seams would nest. So here we go. Let me sew this one up. Let me move this one over here. And I always keep my drawing up for reference, because I will sew it wrong if I don't. And I'm gonna also show you another tip here. So I've nested my seams. I'm using my Bernina, and I got my Sew Steady table. If you saw my other video, I'm really liking it. I can actually put my whole block up here. I really like that part. And this is a scrap quilt. You're just using scraps, so it doesn't have to be perfect. We're just trying to use up those scraps. You know, I don't like to throw fabric away. Maybe I should, I don't know who would want all my scraps. So I'd like to use some of them up. I'd like to get at least, you know, a scrap quilt or two done a year. That way, so I can use it up. That way, if I want to buy something new, I don't feel so bad. So this is the top. Just going to finger press that for now. This is the bottom. So it needs to go this way. No, you know what? I'm going to go through here. So I'm just going to finger press that for you. I'm going to nest my seams, and I'll show you how the block turns out. So this is our block. I don't like the way that meets, but it is scrap. It is a scrap quilt, so this is your block. Or this is your block. Or this. So however you want to turn it, we're going to figure out that when I get all these blocks sewn up. And I also wanted to show you this right here. So I've got this little piece. If I put my ruler on it and measure it, it's just a little tiny bit shy up here in the corner. You probably can't see that, but it is. But that's okay, because if I use it to make the half square triangle, which I'm going to show you. So I just cut that off, and see right here, it's got that little bit off, but that doesn't matter, because here's more. These are some of my squares that I've got cut up. So when I place these right sides together, and the one thing about the white on white, you got to be careful, because I know that some of the blocks, I did not, they were turned the wrong way, but you know what? I left them because you can't hardly tell. So with that little piece in the corner, if I use that as my cutoff, it doesn't matter, because it's going to be cut off anyway. So you know that I always use my folded corner clipper ruler by Creative Grids. So that is, I'll show you. And so that little piece didn't matter. So I was able to use that. Even though it was just a little short in the corner, it didn't matter. So that is another one of my squares that I'll have for my next block to come up. And so let's see what else. Oh, I'm going to show you. This is another tip. This is a binding that I have left over. I usually do the 2.5 inch binding for most of my quilts. Quilts I do 2.5 usually. For table runners I'll do 2.25, but that's my general, just the way I do everything. So I've got this 2.5 inch binding strip here. I can press this out, and I've got a couple scrap blocks right here of these blocks that we're sewing right now. So this is a good way to use up your leftover bindings if you do the 2.5 inch. Also, I know a lot of people, when they do store their scraps, they do usually cut 2.5 inch strips. You know what? If you've cut 2, use 2. I'm just using 2.5 because I have a 2.5 inch cutter with my Quilt. And so I can use that to cut, if I have little squares left over big enough, I can use that. So you can use your leftover bindings. And like I said, if you only have 2 inch squares you've already cut up, just use the 2 inch squares instead of 2.5. So this is more of the fabric that I'm going to go through and see if I have enough. See, I won't be able to use these because, well, I've already sewn them up and they don't have the background that I want. I want a white background or white on white. That's what I'm using. These aren't big enough. So here are some of the scraps that I've been through. You can see that, like this right here, I might be able to use, actually be able to use this for a background. This is a 2.5 inch strip that I've already got cut up, or square. Here's another one, a pink one. I might be able to use that one. It's kind of light. Those are too small, and I just threw those in there. These, I'm assuming this is too small. This is probably a 2 inch, about 2.25. So this is too small. But if I was doing a 2 inch blocks, it'd be perfect. So, and you could also, not only could you use this with jelly rolls. I'm going to move the camera. Beware. You can not only use this with jelly rolls. Instead of doing 2.5 inch squares, you could probably, which I may do, use charm pack squares. That it would be a much bigger quilt, but if you have charm packs to use, I think this is a perfect block for that. You can mix and match the block. And see, do y'all know how old this is? This green here, really old, so old that I don't really know if I'd ever use it. So old, but I've got more than one. So maybe, I don't know, maybe I'll put them out here to see. So these are old fabrics. This pink, I wasn't going to use any kind of batik in here. I was going to not use batiks. I am one of them. I know you can put them all together, but I kind of prefer my batiks to be more with themselves. And here's another 2.5 inch square that I can use for a background. And I will, because it's already cut. See, look, I have a leftover. I could cut this up. I don't know about this. It's got a little bit too much white of a background on it. So, and here's some more greens. My squares I've already got these cut up, so I might as well put those out. Here's some little sunglasses, some blues, 2.5 inch squares. So I'm gonna pull every 2.5 inch square out of this bin here that I like, or I have another match with. and that's kind of it's a tone on tone, but it's more of a cream. Looks like this is just maybe a white, but I can still put it up there. It's already cut. These are already cut, so I'm gonna use them. Here's another one of the blues, so I'm gonna use this for sure. So I'm just going through my scraps. I'm going to show you another scrap bin I have. Well, see, this is too busy. These are already cut, but they're too busy. I don't want to use those. Yeah, it's got all messed up. This, I think it is a little bit too busy too. I'm not sure, but I might just keep them out for just in case. That way, you know, that's less squares I have to cut. Here's some more greens. These aren't too bad. And here's this one polka dot. I don't know if I really care for that one, but I've got it. More green. Apparently, I must have not liked it to begin with. So I do have some old fabrics in here that I just cut up 2.5-inch squares. Now see this, I might be able to use some of those. So that's what's in here, mainly 2.5-inch squares. And then I'll show you this bin right here. To be honest, so I know that I have my binding, some leftover binding that I made, so I'm going to cut that up. The rest of this is, well, a lot of it's batiks. These are really old. Show you some old fabric here. Some old batiks, I guess. I mean, that's really cute, but it's not quite the aesthetic that I want in this quilt. I would maybe do this block in all batiks. Here's another one. Check that one out. So I've had that for quite a while. Let's see what else. This right here, I like that. It's really cute. Be good in a kid's quilt. So these are just odds and ends and some batiks. Now I also have this strip cut here. It must have been, I used part of this for a backing, and this was what was left over, I think. So I could cut these up, and actually, here's another part of the strip that I'd cut off. So here's a couple blocks right here to use. I've got these greens to use. And then when I did the socialites, the first one with Fat Quarter Shop, I bought a Fat Quarter bundle from Busy Lady Quilt Shop, and it's this. So these are all that's leftovers from my from that quilt bundle that went into the socialites. So I have all these fabrics. What I'm trying to do, look at this, I have a whole block in here. I must not have liked it. Oh, here's another one. I think I changed the color. I went and used blue instead. Like I'm going to really use that little guy here, but I try to go for like this right here. This is already, I might be able to cut this up. So let's see. Let's see, can I cut this up to make it a 2.5-inch square? And yes, I can. So I'm going to go ahead and cut this up. And I've already got, so now I can put this with my blues and just go ahead and use that. So if you have those type things, you know, they just need to be trimmed up. They've made it. Maybe, look, here's another one. So I've got that one. I'm assuming it's going to be the same. It's got a white background, so it works out perfect. But my first thought was, or what I was going to try to share with you, is I'm looking for smaller. What was that? What was I thinking? I don't know. We'll figure that one out later. I have a strip here, but that's too small. So I'm trying to find smaller chunks that I can use all that chunk up, and that way I can, you know, get rid of that. Let's find a smaller, something smaller. That's too small. But I did find, looks like, another 2.5 inch square. Or maybe it was supposed to be in a 2.5 inch square because it's shy of that. Dang it. So let's find a little piece of, see, this is a lot of scrap fabric left over. I need to probably refold all this stuff. You know, that's too much to cut off of. You know, I could actually make a whole new entire quilt out of some of what's left in here. But if I can find smaller pieces, I mean, there's maybe this, it's still quite a bit. Or if I could just cut off the odd chunks, like right here, how this is cut out. If I can just cut away from that and maybe square this, the rest of this bigger part up. So that's what I'm doing right now, is I'm trying to go through my scraps and cutting my squares. And, you know, I have already quite a bit of squares cut. So maybe I should just go ahead and, I'd like to combine some of them. I'd like to see if I have some more colors. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through more of my scraps. And when I've got what I think I need, because remember, every block needs a total of 8 2.5 inch squares. So if you're wanting to know, here's all these peaches I have. So that'll be a block. Here's some blues. These are all different kind of blues. Maybe I can find some more of that sunglass fabric. A bunch of different blues, and I already got that. Found that and found another one to match it. And see, I've got some navy blues here. I think I have enough for a whole block, because you need 8 2.5 inch squares. You need 12. If you use all squares, if you're using a Scrappy background, you need 12 2.5 inch squares. If you're using the 2.5 by 4.5 inch rectangle, you'll need 8 2.5 inch squares and 2 2.5 by 4.5 inch squares. So that's what I have for right now. I'm gonna go ahead and get some more scraps together. I'm gonna use the 2.5 by 4.5 inch rectangle and see if that blends in well enough with the rest of the blocks that I've sewn, and see how that goes. And I'll be right back. So here is, or are the blocks that I've sewn together so far for about, I would say, half of my scrap quilt. I don't know what all you can see. So from the one block, it made this. As you can see, I turned each block every other way, and it made, I mean, there's almost like 3 patterns in this quilt. So, in this one block. So I have a lot more scraps to use. So this is probably going to end up being quite a good size quilt, but I really do like how it turned. So far it's turned out. And some of the blocks do have all of the same fabric, and then some don't. I showed you the orange one before, and the red one here, it has different ones. The blue one, I had enough to make one full block. I think I have enough of it to make another. And I showed you earlier the binding that I had left over. So I got to make a block out of that binding. And I also showed you where I found in my bin the blue half square triangles that were already cut. So I got to use those. So I got to use a lot of scraps to make just this and still have halfway to go. Here are a few different quilt block layouts, and I also have the drawn pattern of the block and the measurements. So I wanted to show you so far what that one block will make. And I'm going to show you the block again. This is the block, a really simple block. And I did end up using the 2.5 by 4.5 inch rectangles. I don't have a lot of the 2.5 inch squares. I use those for the other parts, and I use the 2.5 by 4.5. So that's just less seams that I have to meet. So far so good. I also showed you all my messy bins, or some of my messy bins. So I got this one emptied, and then I got all of it and all nice and folded up with Cluck Cluck Sew here, Allison Harris, I think it's Barnyard Balloon fabric. Let me look. Backyard Blooms. So, and my Sherry and Chelsea over here. So I did get some organization that I just turned over. So I got that organized, all folded, two different fabric lines or from different people in one bin. So that's good. And emptied another. This is some squares that I still have left to sew, which I have at least another half of a quilt to make. So I've got those. And what I'm using for some of the squares is I have some odds and ends, white on white fat quarters. So I'm just using those. And for my background, I also think it'd be interesting if you used a color for your background and maybe just used a white, or like if you did an all gray background and maybe did a white and a few other colors just for this. I wonder how that would turn out. So this is the scrap quilt I'm working on for 2023. If you are interested and have any questions that I didn't answer, you can ask me in the comments below, or you can email me at thequiltingcompound@gmail.com. And I think that's all I've got for you, other than I'll have another video. I went to the local quilt shop hop in Shepherdsville, Kentucky, and I wanted to show you some of the deals that I got. So I'll have a video of that coming up soon. So if you would, like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye.